something about your wife. What is it about your wife now?
Yeah, so my wife has been a huge inspiration for not only me, but for a lot of people that I'm aware of in our circle. The reason I bring her up is because, she went from this abusive home starting at the age of 14. She was bullied by her upper siblings and even her own, family in that regard. She grew up just in that era where she, trying drugs and stuff like that and getting
Mhm.
into that. Then she married the bully of her bullies, the guy who bullied her siblings. She
Mhm.
ended up marrying that guy, and he was into drugs as well. And so they did drugs together and they got addicted to those things. And they ended up having a kid, and she wanted to stop doing the drugs, so she started that cycle.
Mhm.
And then they had another kid, and she dropped off her 4-year-old with her mom. Her mom wanted to spend some time with her, and her 4-year-old was telling her mom how they fight all the time. They fight in the car, in the grocery store, in the gas station, at home, and it just
She
never
fights with the
stops.
4-year-old or
No, the husband
is
and
that
wife.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so her mom told her all of this. And so
Mm.
she got this little inkling and she was like, this can't be. I was raised this way. I don't want to bring my children into this. So she set a goal, one, to leave the husband or to
Mhm.
get him to change, and he wouldn't change. And so she ended up leaving him, and she wanted to go get a degree. So she got clean. She was completely clean. She
Mhm.
went and started researching a degree and stuff like that, and it actually led her down a path of finding niche opportunities would be more would be better for someone who didn't have the money to go to college and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So she ended up getting a job and setting a goal to be an executive in 10 years. She wanted to make a certain amount of money and be an executive in 10 years. And so she just put that into her work. She had this value of being this mother first and providing what she wasn't provided. And so she worked her butt off. And so
Huh.
I met her in that space, and I was also kind of in that realm as well. I was to the
Right.
point where I left my ex, and I have 2 kids and my wife has 2
Mhm.
kids. And I was raising my 2 kids. I was living in an apartment with a couple other guys I knew. And one of the things that tore me up was you get that question, what do you see yourself in 5 years, right? Where do you see
Mhm.
yourself? I
Right.
could never answer that question. I never knew how to answer that question. And it showed in my own life. There was a point
Right.
where I wanted to lose weight, but I did it in such an unhealthy way. And the reason I did it was because my kids, my ex told me my kids needed 3 meals on the dot every morning, every afternoon, and every evening, right? There
Uh-huh.
was
The
if they didn't
burnout.
it yeah, if they didn't get those, then she would come at me, and then she would take time away from my kids, and it was
Mm.
horrible. But I ended up in a cycle where I was saving money in order to buy and afford the meals for the weekend when I had my kids. I ended up fasting for 9 days straight because I couldn't afford to eat and provide a 3-course daily meal for my kids when I had them. And it was awful. But I ended up setting some goals and putting some values of my own into practice, and I started to build my life back up. I started to do all that. Once I got to a point where I was comfortable, I had a savings, everything was going good. I got 2 promotions within that year, so everything was really going in a good direction for me. I joined a singles Facebook group, and I met a bunch of wonderful people, and I decided to put myself out there, and I actually put a a little get together, if you will,
Mhm.
at a local bar that we enjoyed going to. And I'm having a good time. I'm meeting a lot of people, and
Mhm.
in walks this woman, right? This just
The girl of
radiant.
your dream.
Yeah, 100%. She walks in. I'm playing cornhole or bags, if you will. So I'm playing this game with another friend of mine, and I look at her, and my friend says, "Hey, this is so and so and her cousin so and so." And I look right at my wife, and
Uh-huh.
I throw this beanbag, right? I'm not looking at the board. I'm not looking at what's going on over here. I'm just staring at her. And I just throw the bag and give her a nice little wink and smile. I'm just like, and it lands dead center. And my wife, and I was like, that's it, sold the deal. That's how that
It.
works.
I love a good love story. My goodness. But the fact that your wife wanted to break the cycle, like the whole circle of being stuck in the addictive world I'm no longer going to use drugs. I am going to set this goal for myself. And she made motherhood part of her values. And you, Travis, you guys' story are just, I'm sitting over here, I was like, girl, you gotta hold it together before you break down and start crying. Because I am just that emotional person. Like, I hear a good love story and then I'm sucked in. I'm sucked in. But before we jump all off into that, ladies and gentlemen, today our topic that we are going to discuss. But before we dive into this topic, I just want you guys to know if you're a working single mother listening to this, do you feel busy? But then when you're busy, you're not doing anything. It feels like the more busier you are, the further you're behind. Or do you also feel disconnected? And if you are feeling disconnected and drained, this episode is for you. Because the problem is that it's not that you're not doing anything, it's not that you're doing too much. The problem is simply because you are doing things that you are no longer in alignment with. The problem is that you're doing things that is not in your scope of who you are becoming as an individual versus a working single mother. My name is Weddy. I am your host of today's episode or this podcast. I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Travis introduce himself to you. So take
Yes.
it away, my friend.
Thank you, Ms. Weta. My name is Travis. I am a values coach, and I have my own podcast where I talk about values in a Forge style theme. I love that theme because it goes along with building values, and instead of using
Yeah,
the word building, I say forging values because that's what we're doing. We're on the iron. We're striking the metal. We are
yeah,
trying to create something that will last, something that will
yeah.
not break, not brittle, something that will we can carry with us proud and prideful into battle.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much for that brief intro. Today, our topic, as you guys have been hearing and I've been listening to, is values. We're going to speak on value, not in a fluffy way, because I don't believe in making things look good for you. Get it wrong. We're going to speak on value in the rawest way possible because value, I believe, is the compass to your life. When you have values, as a working single mother, when you have values and you are fully aware of your values, these things happen. Life become easier. Decision making become easier. The guilt that you feel starts to fade away with time. What do you think about values when it comes to values as an individual, Travis?
I think values are one of the single most important things that we can build for ourselves. They make, like you said, they make us in alignment with where we're supposed to go. And I wholeheartedly believe that we are being pushed in a direction of what
Mm-hmm.
we are, if you will, professional in our experience as people.
Yeah.
We all live different lives. And so we all
Yeah.
have different skills that we can bring to the table to
Yeah.
better ourselves and others.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. How do you think that one can be able to identify their value?
So values to me, you have to think about this in a way that if you have a value, it
Mm-hmm.
is something so strong and so centered in your being that you'd
Mm-hmm.
be willing to give something up or hurt somebody else in order to live that value. And I don't mean hurt like physically. I mean like
Right.
you have a bad friend and they don't align with your values, you need to cut them off. And that's what
Right.
if you have a value, you have to be willing to sacrifice. And
Yeah.
that's what a value is. When you're willing to sacrifice something for what you believe, that's a value.
For me, I also feel like one can identify their values in a simple step as paying attention. Pay attention to what you think and feels that drains you. What are you so resentful towards, or like what scratches you thin? If you do not sit there and have the mindset of, I want to see why am I so drained? like constantly. And this will go out to working single mothers, right? When you don't know your values, you also don't know what your boundaries are. You don't know your boundaries because when you value your time, if time management is valuable to you, you set boundaries with the job to let them know I value my time with myself, I value my time with my family, I value the time that I'm giving you. And because I value this time, this is what I can give you. This is how many hours I'm able to work. Then when you come home, you tell your children, I value my me time. I can only spend this X amount of time with you guys because I need to regroup, refresh myself to be able to be your mother because this is a role, right? That I'm playing. I'm able to give you the best that you need me to give you at the time that you need me. What do you think about values when it comes to one's professional life?
Even in that realm, I think that everything that you just said is accurate. You need boundaries, you need to have values in your professional life. And I believe that values can intermingle, but I do believe that you need values for one, your personal life, and two, your professional life, because those two
Yes.
things can differ wildly. And so if you don't
Yes.
set boundaries, I mean, you're a walking people pleaser. And
Yes.
it says, and if you look, I had to look at this internally. I'm a people pleaser for sure. And
Okay.
so I had to look at this, like you said, I started to not value myself and my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would give it freely to other people. But now that I value my time, when somebody wants some advice, I ask them, "Are you ready to hear it?" Because it can be a wild roller coaster.
Wow. So when you became that people pleaser, how did it shift?
It took a lot of work.
What did you do?
That's something I had to recognize, right? So I my wife told me, "Hey, you people please this person a lot." And I started looking at it like, holy moly, I do. I don't really stand for a lot of things. Like, my ex would say something to me about my current wife, and instead of calling her out, I just let it roll off, and I didn't wanna start an argument, and I didn't wanna this or that. But realistically, what you're doing is you're putting the the food into what beast, right? So am I feeding my ex and saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna give you my emotional attention. I'm gonna give you my emotional authority. You can do with that what you will." Or am I giving it to my wife? Well, at the time I wasn't, and I didn't even know that. My wife's like, "I don't like that you don't stand up for me." And I'm like, "Whoa, I gotta look at this." And so I went back and I was like, "All right, let me look at this. Let me look at the text messages that were sent
Okay.
across. Let me see how I didn't do this." And then I started building that value for myself. So when the next time that, my ex reached out and was like, "Your wife, da da da," I was like, "I'm gonna stop you right there. That's not true. You are
Okay.
being such and such." And
Right.
and she's like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" I'm like, "I'm just
That's
done
right.
letting you, yeah, I'm
Right.
done letting you have the authority over me."
Right. Man, I feel that when it comes to working single mothers, oh my God. Travis, I bet when your wife was married, right? She had every thought in her mind as to when I leave this man, how am I going to live at some point? And those thoughts were not her thoughts. Those thoughts and those beliefs were not hers. They were simply something that she had seen through her environment, through society, through her upbringing, that she truly took to and believed. And it made her leaving him a bit more complicated than she even thought it could be. But here is why I say this. As a working single mother, single mothers out here now, I say this based on what I do coaching, working with single mothers, working single mothers. We value society expectations so much as to how we should present ourselves that it makes it hard for us to be able to value who we are as a woman. Because of how we value those stereotypical grooming decisions that we live by, we want to raise our kids, like you said, ex wife said, 3 4 course meal, right? Morning, breakfast, afternoon, lunch. evening dinner. Cool. But as you and I are aware of, the kids are not always with us. They're at school sometimes. So when they eat breakfast, which is not always at home, depending on the time of the day or the time of the year that you get to keep them, if they were at school and they had to come spend their time with you, because I don't know what time they came to spend, right? This is just an
Mm.
example I'm putting together. If they had to come spend their time with you and it was during the school day that you had to drop them off, more than likely they'll eat dinner with you. Sometimes it's breakfast, but just a quick run, right? Lunch is spent at school, depending on how old they are. So it's like those kind of bubbles and plans that people have to put on us and expect us to raise our children like that not only make us uncomfortable but make our children uncomfortable as well. How did that groom you as a dad?
So, I mean, it really did. I struggled with it. I felt less than a father, less than a man when I wasn't able to do those things. So I had to cut into my own flesh, into my own sacrifices and be able to deal out, to make.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is the kids weren't always hungry. When I made breakfast, I was like, "Hey, breakfast is done. I'm not hungry, Dad." And this and that. I'm like, "Okay, well, I provided it, so you got to go eat it because if you don't, then you're gonna tell your mom, and your mom's gonna come down on me." And so those expectations are real. And like you said, sometimes they go to school and get their food. Sometimes they just don't
Right.
eat. They're not hungry, and to force a kid to eat is way worse than providing them the opportunity. And so in that realm of things, like you were saying before, I wanted to touch on the
Mm-hmm.
societal expectations. It's
Right.
like that electric fence that you put out for a dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never done this, but I've seen it, and you put the collar on, and once they reach that boundary, it shocks them to the point where in about a year or even less, you can take that cage away, and they would still believe that it's there. And
Right.
that's what people do. My wife thought that cage was there for her and her husband at the time. She thought it was there. How can she leave? No one's going to take her in. Her mom, kicked her out when she was 18 and told her to go live with her boyfriend. So how can she go back to her mom? Her mom won't accept her. All of these ideals get positioned as that boundary that you cannot cross. Because if you do, you'll get shocked. But the fact is, the cage is one of our own design.
What you said is so powerful. No one is going to understand this, but our values allow us to change. It allows you to change. If you don't change, or if you're not able to follow the change and you fail, that doesn't mean you're a failure.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're a failure at all. When you change and when you understand and stand on, like nowadays, the term out here, I'm standing on business. When you stand here, right?
I love that.
Excuse me.
The
When
song that
you
goes with it too.
Yeah, when you stand on business and stand on your value becomes solidified. Like you're able to gain that confidence that you need and thrive. Especially as a working single mom, standing on your values, understanding what your values are. For example, do you value peace? Do you value security? Do you value financial stability? Do you value freedom, growth? All of those things plays a big role in who you are as human, as a woman. Do you value a soft life? Like now everybody wants a soft life and I do too. Don't get me wrong. The softest of life is what I want. I don't want nothing else. Okay. I'm solely manifesting this going into 2026. I'm like, no. Because being productive doesn't mean that you have values. It doesn't. It's like a simply way of saying, I'm fixing myself up to be burned out. I'm opening myself, I'm doing too much. But I'm still not in alignment with who I am or who I'm becoming. I'm still not in alignment with my values because your value is what drives you to be in alignment with who you're becoming. Any thoughts that you have in alignment?
Yeah, I mean, that's you hit it right on the head, right? With values, a lot of times what people think is a value is actually just them trying to people please someone else, like your boss. I have a value of hard work. Actually, you just like to see your boss happy, and so you work hard because of that reason. But if
Mm-hmm.
your boss wasn't there and you had to work for yourself, would you work just as hard? So
Ooh.
that's the thing that people get confused. So whenever I talk about building values with people, it's always don't go through a list and find all of your values. I want
Right.
you to go through a list and find one that really sits with you. And then I
Mm-hmm.
want you to think about that. I want you to hammer in your head, pick scenarios, make up scenarios, and figure out, okay, what would be in alignment with my value if I did this or I did this? Because it's like integrity when no one is watching
Watching.
is is way better than integrity when people are watching. Responsibility without resentment or without second guessing everything that you do
Mm-hmm.
is better than having the responsibility and second guessing everything that you do. And so you have to think about these things on another level,
Mm-hmm.
because if you just let it sit with what you're doing, you tend to build values around people's interpretation of you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not really a value, that's just you putting on a mask and saying, "Hey world, here I am."
Yeah. Over the past few days before we even got to this episode, when I tell you, I have been having the worst dry cough. The
Oh no,
worst dry, yeah, I've been having the worst dry cough. You see me looking around. I'm actually looking
looking
for
for
my
water.
ginger. No, no, not the water. No, I have my tea here, but I am like the natural girl, so it's like I'm looking around for my ginger. I had it cut up, but
Mm,
that's besides. So it's like it helps soothes my throat.
yeah.
But let's stay on track. Forget the health issue.
No worries.
Even though I value my health, but right
Yeah.
now I value this episode reaching out to the right audience, the right person, and the right people. When we speak of values, no one out here is saying that make yourself or detach yourself from society. I want you all to understand this. Society does not make you, you make up society. Because without you being in society, there is no thing called society. Society needs you. Your values mold society. Travis, being a dad, how did your values help you when it comes to parenting?
Yeah, so it helped me, in a big way. Like, I never wanted to be the parent who put hands on a kid or anything like that. So that was one of my values, was to go into it with love and kindness and be able to talk about issues instead of being forceful with those things. So I learned early on, there was a moment when my son, who is 14 now, he was
Mm-hmm.
about 3 or 4. I was having some me time and I was stressed out, and I let the stress get to me. This is before I had values, before I had, my clear thought process.
Right.
And I was playing a video game with a few friends that I don't see. They were from California, Pennsylvania, New York, and Florida, and we were just having a good time. And my son comes down. It's past bedtime, way past bedtime, and he's like, "I hear you playing a game. I want to play with you." And I'm like, "It's actually bedtime. You got to go to bed." And he went upstairs, and then he come back downstairs, and he's like, "I need a cup of water." And I'm like, "All right." So I got him water, and he went back upstairs, and then he comes back downstairs. And this happened 3 or 4 other times after this. And at the last one, I got upset, and I have no idea why. I yelled at him.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends got on there like, "Yeah, you tell him, you tell that kid, da da da." And they were hyping me up. And I hated it. I felt
Mm-hmm.
disgusting. So I told my friends, I'm like, "Hey guys, I gotta go." And they were like, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like, "I just gotta go." And I turned it all off, and I went upstairs and I sat with him, and I asked him how he felt, and I asked him, what me raising my voice did. And he just straight told me he was afraid. He was scared. And I'm like, I get it. And from that point on, I made a value that I don't want to raise my voice unless I absolutely have to. And I never want to do it toward family, especially as young children are being developed. They don't need to be screamed at. They need someone to go to them at their level, because they're not experiencing the world the way we did. They're experiencing
Right.
it a different way. And we have to get on their level with them. Yes, we have knowledge, and it's good to give that knowledge so that they don't make the same mistakes you do. But just like I was a kid and I touched the hot iron on the stove, sometimes they need to touch the hot iron on the stove.
You're right about that. Like, get a few burns so you can understand what your values are. And I feel that, remember what I said earlier about you failing? When you fail, doesn't mean that you don't have values. You need to fail to be able to identify where your values are.
Correct.
Sometimes it takes more than two, three trials to fail.
And sometimes you got to ask yourself a question.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't mean
yeah.
to interrupt
Oh,
you
no,
there.
go ahead.
My wife asked this question early on when she was determining what to do with her life. She reached this point where she said, you know, is she going to break in this cycle? Is she going to break
Mm,
going through what she's going through? Or is she going to be the one to break the cycle? Right? Because the other question to that was, or the other thought process there was, and this is kind of one of the more powerful things that I've collected from her as far as statements go. She said, if what I went through was so much, that being so much hell that she
mhm.
went through, the opposite has to be possible. And I'm like, wow, I mean, that's an amazing little tidbit quote from my wife.
Yes.
If what you're going through is hell, the opposite has to be possible. And so that's what she's lived the last, 7, 8 years believing. The
I'm going to
opposite
take
has
it.
to be possible.
I'm going to take that quote and I'm going to quote it in this episode. If what you're going through is hell, the opposite has to be possible. If single parenting is hell right now, the opposite of it, there are possibilities. There are possibilities. So identifying your failed value when you first started, please understand that on the other side of failure, there are possibilities. I mean, a lot of possibilities that you would not even fathom. I truly love that. Wow.
Yeah, she's a wise woman. I try to listen to her when she
The
talks.
girl is. Yes, 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 from what you're saying. Yes, she is.
And
Yes, she
it's funny
is.
because when you build values, you start to think differently
Yes.
because you
And
start to build
feel.
things. Exactly, you feel differently. You
Man.
know, my wife, she didn't escape her life,
Mhm.
right? She worked on herself inside of the mess, the trauma, the reactions, the bad communication, and how she showed up at work, at home, and for herself, all while parenting kids on her own, all while holding responsibility
Mm.
for all of that in her own life shows that you can do it. You just have to set your mind and manifest. I never really believed in manifesting,
Mhm.
but I'm coming around to it. I'm coming around to it a lot and quickly.
You're there.
When you manifest these things, your brain starts to find ways to make it happen.
Yes.
Whereas when you're victimized and you think, well, I can't get anywhere because you start to look at all the becauses instead of the excuses to get out of that.
Hmm.
And when you start looking at the reasons why life is going well, you start to think, okay, well, this is going well, this is going well, this is going well. I can improve this.
And then
And
life
and
presents everything to always go well.
yeah, if you're right here and you start the victim mindset, you fall to it. But if you're right here and you start the manifestation mindset, you go here.
There you go. Wow. I love that. One of the biggest things that I value now in my life is clarity. Having peace to gain clarity. I value that so much because with clarity comes guidance. With clarity comes purpose. With clarity comes leadership. And understanding who you are with clarity sets the tone for my day. When I get up in the morning, I value my sense of peace. I'm not into the noise and all that. So it's like a day that is settled and then it starts to escalate into something. that I find balance in, right? So when I first get up in the morning, because I value my peace and I also value clarity, I get up, sit up, and it's quiet. I head on to the gym. 30, 45 minutes into my, no, like 20, 15, 20 minutes into my workout, when I'm all warmed up, the peak is up. It's up. I value my mental stability. I value great communication because I'm like, don't come over here asking me an uncommon sense question. You know the answer to this question. Yeah, if like people be like, oh, you wear glasses, don't you see it? Right? Like, don't you see it? Or like questions like, oh, you got your hair done. Obvious. It's you,
Just say it looks nice and move on.
thank you. I'm like, give me the compliment and move on.
Yeah.
Right. So as a mom, I value communication with my children. I value communication so much that I go from tell me what makes you happy, tell me what makes you mad, tell me how I can respect you. I am that type of parent that will not sit there and tell my kid, you cannot do this. I value their space, I value their time. But for them to get around that, to be like, oh, my mommy showed me this, let me do, you know, reciprocate the same, is where the question mark is. Because it's like, they're your kids. They feel that they need to not do what you're doing for them because your mom, your dad, let me just get away with this, and like they're going to be okay with that. But no, it shouldn't be that way. I'm saying this to say, to go back to what you were saying about you and your son's communication as to how uncomfortable your son felt. You value the point in your life that you're not going to be the same parent to your child that your parents were to you. You wanted to break that. So, my question to parents out here, what do you value in your parenting style to make parenting successful for you? Or take away parenting. What do you value about yourself? And this is going to hurt but bless someone at the same time, Travis. But let me drink my water first. We're going to get there.
I'll copy that.
Yeah, please. Yeah. So, and when I say it's going to hurt, and remember when I said that this conversation or this episode is not going to be something fluffy, it's going to be real life. Here it goes. As a working single mother, when you value what love means to you, when you can identify what love is or what it means to you, you're able to select the right partner. And until you can identify that, you will keep bumping your head, learning from love. Instead of giving love, you will learn from it. Because I'm not saying that you never learn from it, you do, but it will always be a teacher for you. And it's supposed to be. This is life. It's supposed to be. So, because a lot of working single mothers fail at their values, you leave a relationship that is not serving you right. You are lack of what we're talking about today, value. You feel the need to walk away from a relationship, but then return to the relationship that you walked away from because you are lack of value. If you only had the value that you are lacking, you will leave that person alone. And like we previously said, stand on business, stand on your value, and keep moving forward. And keep moving forward. Your value builds confidence. Your value builds self trust, self worth, self love. It keeps you feeling like you truly are your own boss, and you are. I applaud your wife in so many ways for changing her trajectory. I mean, and just sticking to it. Like she said, what did she say again? If it didn't do what now? What happened?
Yeah, so you're talking about the statement of the hell, and yeah,
Yes, yes.
if you go through that much hell,
Mm-hmm.
the opposite has to be true. And it lives that in my life right now. She told me that because I was asking her, I was grilling her, I was interviewing her this week, and I'm like, I need to know more. I want to be able to talk about your experience a little bit. I'm like, I want to just bring you in and have you do this interview, honestly, because I think you could
Yeah.
provide so much for all of your listeners and everything along with that, because she is amazing in that regard too. But like, yeah, her communication, she tells me how she feels loved. She communicates that with me. She tells me how she feels not respected in the home and things like that. And I do the same for her. We're not grand, lavish, materialistic type
Right.
people. I try to find the finer things that will make her happy.
Hmm.
Like it's not much, but like is she listening? I've got her Christmas presents already, and I I went out of my way to make this, and
Uh-huh.
it's just a cutting board, but it's like beach theme. It's got the ocean in there,
Wow.
and it's the waves of affirmation is what I call it. So I've got little affirmations listed in there that she can read, and so she'll just have this hanging up
You
somewhere where she can
gotta
see it.
stop. Oh my God.
And then
That is so beautiful.
And then I made her a candle where I just like made a normal candle, but I put some nice smells in there. And then I also put in intentions. I wrote my intentions for her, what I want her life to be. And then I put them in the candle. So when it melts down and burns and releases that into the ethos, that hopefully those intentions will come true.
So for a
And
man
so
who does not believe in manifestation, here you go manifesting a great life for her. See that? You see
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Wow.
and
Keep
and
going.
she
Don't stop.
reciprocates, right? She does that for me. She finds what I like and what I enjoy. Like, I've been reading a lot and getting better at those things. Well, what is she doing? She's making me a book to read. Like, she's coming up with that, she's figuring it out. And so, we're finding where we meet each other, and
Hmm.
that wouldn't have happened had one I not got comfortable with being alone. That was one of the issues I had early on, was being comfortable being alone.
Oh, you
I
know we can
wanted to
get
be
into
in a
that.
I wanted to be in relationship after relationship because I hated being alone. But I let myself, and you have to let yourself. She let
Mm.
herself be alone. In fact, her and her cousin were gonna buy a house together, because they didn't want a person to come in because they both were not dating the right people.
Hmm.
And so that happens. And then we met each other in that moment where we both aligned. Did we have disagreements? Of course. Of course. But if you don't see the disagreement as the problem instead of your spouse, your relationship won't last. And so your intention has to be pure, and your partner has to believe that your intention is pure.
Hmm.
And then at that point, all of the problems can be worked out.
See, you just opened a new can of worm that I did not want to get into when it comes to relationships and values. And I tried tipping toe around it, even though I said that this episode is not going to be fluffy. We're not going to fluff it up, right? But being that you said something, let me just go ahead and keep dumping the can out.
Yeah, do it.
So we live our lives on edge, right? And your lives are only lived on edge when you lack value. But when you have set boundaries, you value your single life until the right person can be in alignment with you and they come together. And this is what I meant by your values will become a problem when you are out of alignment. When you have values, everything falls in alignment. Values is not something that can strike you dead. It's truly not. It's something to keep you in alignment. So when you find yourself saying that I am uncomfortable being by myself, I feel so uncomfortable being by myself, I want to ask you, what are your values? Do you value peace? The other question I want to ask you, what exactly are you running from? That you cannot value your time, your space, to think of who you are, where you want to go, who are you becoming. Valuing your time, your peace, your space keeps you in alignment because it gives you clarity. It gives you clarity. And look at you, had you not been by yourself and your wife being by herself, there is no such thing as coincidence for you guys to be in alignment to me. And it just took a simple I wink and the beanbag for it, for everything to be solidified, like you said.
Yeah.
Like that was
Well, man,
yours.
she told me that she looked at her cousin and goes, "Dibs." Like I was like, "No, you didn't." I thought that was like a man thing to do, but she totally did that. I'm like, this woman is perfect for me.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's alignment right there. So, what would be something that you would have for our audience before we close this episode today?
Yeah, I mean, other than everything I said, like when I was alone, I valued my own inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did when I was dating is I got a feel for them early on. I wanted to know how their life was in trajectory. So I asked them simple questions, and simple questions can get you a long ways. Like, where are you going in life? What do you see yourself, doing in 5 years professionally? Where do you see yourself personally in
Mm-hmm.
5 years? And just getting that understanding, and then talking to and with the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went on a few dates with a few different people, and they just weren't in that alignment. And you have to feel it because the universe will push you. They'll
Yeah.
push people out of your life, they'll push people into your life. And if you struggle, you will struggle. So you have to be able to recognize when something is going well and write it, learn from it, get what you were supposed to learn from that,
Mm-hmm.
and move on. Sometimes, like with my wife, we were learning from each other, we were growing with each other. And then at some point, we started to kind of stagnate.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we realized, hey, if we're going to be complacent, this relationship's not going to work. And so we talked to each other, and we are like, yeah, we want to grow. We want to do this and that. Like, I want to build a school and teach and provide educational resources for those who can't. And she wants to help parents get educational resources. She wants to help kids in the foster system, kids in adoptions. We want to bring this whole thing into one foundation, one that really steps up its game and helps before the state gets involved and takes kids from parents and all that stuff. And so if I were to leave you with something, it would really be pick a value and build it to the point where you no longer have to think to do. You
Mm-hmm.
just do.
And if you're thinking on how to pick a value, I'm going to leave you with 3 ways on how to identify your value. So, the very first way that I have of you identifying your values will be you simply paying attention to what drains you. If it drains you, it's not in alignment. It's not in alignment. Okay? The next step will be follow what brings you relief. Pay attention to the moment that feels calming, grounding, and be honest with yourself. That's the next way. The third way would be to look through the lens of your children's eye and see, because you were once a kid. Look through their lens, like you said, your son. He felt uncomfortable. And because it made him uncomfortable, it also made you uncomfortable. So that would be the 3 best ways that you can be able to identify your values and shift your perspective or decide on how you can go ahead and pick what means so much to you and what is so valuable to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Miss Weddy Gore, and welcome again to Solo Shift Podcast. If this episode resonates with you, follow us. We're on every platform. When I say every, there is no platform that we're not at. We're on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Yeah, there's another one called, I think, Setback or Substack. I don't know if you heard. It's a very good platform. Yeah, we're there. Do you have any platform that you're currently at for our audience to follow you?
Yeah, I'm active on TikTok. I'm actually going to be making a good shift into Instagram and being
Okay.
more heavy on Instagram. But other than that, I'm just on your normal podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all those.
Okay. Okay. And what would be your name on there, just in case they want to follow?
Yeah, you can just search up like Travis Murray or Travis Murray VO.
Okay.
Um, that would take you to me.
Okay. Well, here you guys have it. Thank you, and please understand what your values are and be able to identify them, because your values are not against you, they are for you once it is identified. Have a good day and be blessed.